I have a discussion for you today about classical rhetoric and Monroe's motivated sequence. These are two styles of persuasion or formats of persuasion, and these are the two that we will rely on as we're building persuasive speeches. So to begin, classical rhetoric was conceived of by Aristotle. And Aristotle came up with this observation because he noticed that when he was lecturing with his students, he would finish the lecture and then leave and come back the next day. And when he would arrive, his students would be debating and discussing whatever points he had brought out in the prior day's lecture. And Aristotle was very confused by this because in his view, I just gave you the lecture. I told you the information that you needed. You wrote it down. You have it. End of story. Let's move on. Why are you discussing and debating this? There's no debate. And so what Aristotle came to see was that you can't simply tell an audience, here are the facts and the details and information, and if you don't accept them, then you're an idiot. You have to nuance the message a little better than that. People tend to bristle if you simply give them information and expect that they will accept it whole cloth. So Aristotle conceived of classical rhetoric, and those are three different forms of appeals. And what that means is that there are three different methods that can be used to earn the respect or regard of the audience. And basically, an appeal is just you asking someone to hear you out. Please listen to me. Just like when you got a speeding ticket and they found you guilty, but you knew you weren't speeding, and so you went to the next higher court up, and you said, I would like to appeal this ticket. In other words, you're asking the judge to listen to your case because you don't believe you got a fair shot the first time. You're making an appeal. You're asking, kindly listen to me and hear my case. So these appeals come in three forms: ethos, pathos, and logos. And let me explain what each of those means. An appeal from ethos means that you are making a connection with the broad social beliefs or ethics of the audience. So if I were to give a speech in Texas, I might start out by saying something like, it's good to be here today. I always enjoy giving a speech in Texas because you folks down here do things your own way. The other 49 states kind of get in line and do what they're supposed to do. But in Texas, people are very open-minded and free-spirited and have very strong wills. And so Texas doesn't march to the same beat that everyone else does. They have their own drum. And so I really enjoy that independent, strong-willed mind of the average Texan. So it's good to be here. Now, why would I say something like that? Because I have to know a little bit about my audience before I begin. And if I'm giving a speech in Texas, then I know that these things are true, right? People in Texas have a lot of state pride. They are very strong-willed and independent-minded. And so for me to point that out is to try and make a connection with the audience so that perhaps they will see me and they will feel like, oh, he's one of us. He gets it. He understands us. If I can make that type of connection with the audience, then they're more likely to accept whatever my persuasive point is. So that was an appeal from ethos. Next is pathos, which simply means emotion. And if I were to make an appeal from emotion, that means that I am trying to draw and tug on your heartstrings. And by the way, this is the most effective appeal. I might start out by saying I can look around the audience and see that we're all adults here. And so I can know that that means each of you has probably been through some tragic event. I hope that you haven't, but odds are you have. You've probably lost a loved one, a parent, or a grandparent. And if not, you probably know someone who has. And so you either understand personally or through being directly in touch with someone close to you, the pain and the sense of loss that people go through when they lose a loved one. And you understand how difficult this can be. Your life is turned upside down. You will forever have a void there when you lose this person. And it's really a matter of how you go about filling that void in life in order to get over it. That's what makes the biggest difference. And so I'm sure that everyone can relate to having gone through that experience. That's why I came here today to talk to you about the dangers of using tobacco. Now, notice the big long-winded preamble didn't have anything to do directly with using tobacco, but I was trying to find something that we could all relate to. So when I talked about the sense of loss and having lost a loved one, odds are almost everyone in the audience is going to be able to relate to that. And so when I bring that up and I get them thinking about that, they start resonating with me emotionally. And we kind of go to that same somber place where, we're a little bit sad, and maybe some memories are brought up of people that were once close to us. And that's the idea. That's how I make the connection with the audience, because part of doing that will make them feel as though I have something in common. I also understand the pain and the loss that accompanies having lost a loved one. So in that sense, I'm making the connection with my audience. So that's an appeal using pathos. You all probably stay up late like I do and watch the commercials that come on. And there's the one for the pets, ASPCA, I think it is. And it's playing that horribly sad song. And the woman's voice it's so depressing and sad. It's very hard to listen to. And they're showing images, and they're all like very watercolor or black and white, and they're animals that are like in the rain, or they look like they're abandoned, or no one's taking care of them, or the cat is limping down the street. And it's so hard to watch that. I mean, I have to turn it off. I either have to mute the music, which is so sad, or I have to turn it off altogether because I can't look at it. And the reason is because if I do, I'm going to be so overwhelmed with sadness that I will race to my checkbook and call them and to tell them, just take what you need. It's so upsetting to see animals in distress that way. So that's an example of a television commercial that uses pathos with great effect, very, very successfully. And good for them. They should. I happen to think it's a good cause. And so if that's what they need to do in order to get the audience to go get their checkbook, then so be it. But you should be aware of that. Now, finally, the third appeal is the appeal from logos. Logos meaning logic. So I make an appeal from logic by simply using basic logic in my approach or in my argument. So it's a little more subtle where the logic is. It's not baked into the words that I use. It's not necessarily in my opening appeals, but I'm not going to contradict myself. I'm not going to be hypocritical. Those would be examples of staying logical. And for us, the use of logos might look something like this. Suppose that I were at a city council meeting, and I said, look, I propose that we lower the speed limit on our major highways around the city from 65 back down to 55. And what I've done is I've collected 3 studies from around the country in cities of approximate size where they have lowered their speed limits from 65 back down to 55. And you can see in each case, the data shows that these cities are experiencing fewer instances of traffic injury and death by a significant margin in just a few years. So let me hand these studies out and everyone can take a look at the data for themselves. Well, the data in those studies would be the logos. It's the facts and the logic, the indisputable empirical evidence that supports my case. That would be rhetorical logos, or use of logos in rhetoric. So you have those 3 basic elements. You have ethos, pathos, and logos. A rhetorical device is something like a slogan. And this is where we can usually see examples of rhetoric in another way. So a slogan is sort of cartoonish and obvious, and they really rely heavily on the use of rhetoric or implied messaging. So anytime you see a message in advertising, let's say, you will have the overt message, which is the obvious message, and then the implied message, which may not even occur to you. It may just subtly sink its way in and you're not even aware of it. Take, for example, the car commercials. You'll see a sports car, and where are they usually driving it in the commercial? It's up and down the California Pacific Coast Highway, or out in Monument Valley in Utah, where all the scenic land is, and it's very red and rugged and rocky, and kind of looks like those scenes from the Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons. And so the implied message would be freedom. If you buy this car, look, the wind in your hair and the kind of the American dream, and you get freedom when you buy this car. But that wouldn't be the direct message. The direct message is simply, here's the car, it's a Buick or whatever it is, and look, it handles really well and it goes fast and you can drive it, right? The car is being featured, but the implied message, the reason that they're showing you that car going through these scenic areas is because the implied message is freedom, or being able to enjoy the American dream. It's a secondary hidden message that's kind of baked into the main message. So you have the overt message, which is the car and how it handles, and then you have the implied message, which is freedom. And both of these work very effectively. The implied message is always the rhetorical device or the rhetorical message. Two slogans also demonstrate the effectiveness of the rhetorical device. So take, for example, the slogan or the movement, if you prefer, Black Lives Matter. So what is the overt message? The overt message is, hey, the lives of black folks matter, so pay attention to this. What is the rhetorical message or the implied message? Well, all we have to do is look in the mirror to see this. In the same way that they spell the word ambulance backwards on an ambulance. Why do they do that? So that when you see it in the rearview mirror, it's flipped and reversed and you can see it correctly the way that it's supposed to be spelled. We can kind of use this magic trick to extract the rhetorical message from a slogan as well. So Black Lives Matter, what is the rhetorical message? That black lives don't matter. Because you wouldn't need to chant as a slogan, Black Lives Matter, if it weren't the case that it seems like black lives don't matter. So simply by saying that statement, Black Lives Matter, you are at the same time implying that black lives do not matter. And this is an issue and we need to fix this. So there is the overt and implied message in that statement. Next would be Make America Great Again. This is a campaign slogan of a former president. And so the overt message is, hey, everyone, let's make this country great again. Let's do these things and enact these policies or whatever that entails. But the implied message, again, look at it in the mirror and flip it around. The implied message is that America is no longer great. So therefore, we need to fix it. We need to make America great again. So simply by making this statement, make America great again, I am at the same time implying that America is not great right now. And that is how you use a rhetorical message. Now, Monroe's motivated sequence is a completely different type of persuasive model. So unlike rhetoric, where I'm saying statements in order to get the audience to relate to me, Monroe's motivated sequence is simply a template for persuasion. And there are 5 steps. And it works like it's like a sausage grinder. So you can take any argument and just put it into the grinder and then turn the handle and then out comes an argument. It sort of reprints the argument onto these 5 steps. And so most advertisers use this, especially the infomercials where they sell the goofy products. And I'll include some links so you can take a look at that. They have no shame about it at all. They're open about using Monroe's motivated sequence, and they are so because it works so well. So Monroe's motivated sequence has 5 steps, and they are attention. You first get the attention of your audience. How do you do that? Well, if you're a speaker, you tell a joke or point out an interesting fact or a statement about something or a shocking statistic. Next is need. I have to convey to the audience that their lives are imperfect in whatever way, and therefore they need this thing. So you see this in the infomercials where they'll be struggling to do something. Are you tired when this happens? And they show the over dramatized series of events where people are struggling in a way that no sane person would ever actually struggle because they're trying to play it up. Because next comes satisfaction. Once I've made you feel like, oh, I need that, then, well, I can provide the satisfaction. Here's my product. I have this. This will solve your problem. This will make your life better. Whether it's a product or it's an idea, whatever it is, I'm giving a solution to the problem that I established. So here we are: attention, need, satisfaction. Next is visualization. In the step of visualization, I am simply reinforcing my solution. So in the infomercial, I might show you several different instances of how this will work, and I'll show someone using it. You could think of the Ginsu knife, I think is a popular one, where it starts out and the need would be that you have this dull knife and it smashes the tomatoes into pulp, and it's frustrating, you can't cut it. And then, satisfaction, here's the new Ginsu knife. And what do? I go through the visualization. I show the guy cutting a can with it, and then he cuts a tomato, and the slices of tomato are so thin you can see through them. It's just razor sharp, and it's perfect. That's the visualization, reinforcement. And last is the step of action. If you want this, you have to take action now. It's really your last chance to convince the audience that they've got to act. Don't wait, right? If I were trying to convince you to go on a healthy diet, and I said that starts with fruits and vegetables, and that were the general idea within my speech, then I might conclude by saying, listen, don't wait until next week to start this, or don't wait until the next time you're going to go grocery shopping, because you won't do it. You'll blow it off, and it's too important for that. I want you to go home today when you leave this auditorium. I want you to go to the grocery store. I want you to take out a $20 bill. And I want you to go over to the produce section, and I want you to pick out one of these and one of these and one of these, and pick out a couple of different vegetables and a couple of different fruits, maybe something you've never had or something you haven't had in a long time, and just get yourself a nice big mixed bag of fruits and vegetables for that $20 bill. And that way you can sample each of them next week, and that will get you a good head start. You'll know what you like and what you don't like, what works in your lunch and what doesn't, and then you can go from there. But don't wait. Start today. So I encourage you, do that on the way home. Take the $20 and go now. That's my final sales pitch. It's my last opportunity to actually get you to do it. So if I end weekly and I just kind of, so that's a speech about, eating healthier, then you're not likely to do it. You're going to go, oh, that's nice, and I'll think about it, but probably not. So in the step of action, I really try to push you to do it today. I'm cheering you on. I'm motivating you to do it. And you can see this as well in the infomercials. Call now. The first 100 people that call will be able to get one of these at full price and a second one at half price. So don't wait. Don't delay. Call now. Operators are standing by. That's to coach you like, well, gosh, I guess I better run to the phone and call now. Where's my credit card? So that is a little bit about Monroe's motivated sequence. Again, I will include some examples of infomercials, though I'm certain that you're all familiar with those. Understand the difference between these two styles of persuasion basically is that with classical rhetoric, ethos, pathos, and logos, we are making appeals to the audience, trying to find common ground so that they relate to me and they are more likely to accept my message. So Monroe's motivated sequence would be a very different, it's kind of the grinder style where you put the argument in and it just churns it out on the same template. Therefore, classical rhetoric is a more appropriate approach if you have a serious topic. Monroe's motivated sequence would be the correct approach if you have a more lighthearted topic. If you have an item that you're selling or you just have a novel idea, then maybe Monroe's motivated sequence would work best for that. However, classical rhetoric is the method that you want if you have a more serious topic. Here's why we should outlaw the death penalty, or here's why abortion is immoral, or here's why I think you should do this, or whatever it is. Serious topic, classical rhetoric, more lighthearted or fun or salesmanish, Monroe's motivated sequence. All right, that's going to do it for this lecture. Please make note of the distinction between these two styles, because I will ask you to choose one of them when you put your persuasive speeches together, and depending on what the topic is, that should direct you to which style you ought to use. And you may find yourself in a situation where you can hybrid both of them. So maybe a persuasive speech could have elements of Monroe's motivated sequence, but it also had rhetorical components in it as well. That would be ideal. That's a little bit about classical rhetoric and Monroe's motivated sequence.